So with how far as the Apocalypse's manga is going right now, and the fact we're on a hiatus at the moment, one thing I've been meaning to talk about for a while now is what's going on with Lancelot. Because from what we know from the very start of the time skip, we know that after everything that happened with Percival, he left and went back to Benwick and essentially came home crying and sulking the fact that he couldn't save his best friend. And so, what all of us have assumed is that Lancelot might still be in Benwick at the time of the time skip, but there are other possibilities as to what's going on with Lancelot that I want to get into a bit in this video. Before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right into things. So let's briefly discuss the Lancelot Depression arc that has kind of gotten popular amongst fans at the time of this recording, because once we found out that Lancelot was incredibly upset and depressed through Bond's dialogue and flashback for when Lancelot returned to Benwick after the death of Percival, we all assumed that perhaps Lancelot is just staying in his room, staying isolated from others, and being fully in depression, dulling his skills and thus just not caring about the rest of the world, as he failed to help and save somebody that he truly begun to care for, as if he was a brother, his best friend, and he failed him. Now, let's all remember that when Percival was having that internal crisis in his head after finding out the truth, Lancelot most likely was able to hear it. Because remember, Lancelot can hear everyone's hearts and minds. And as you remember from the Jericho interaction, I hate saying it every time, when someone's emotions and thoughts race and go out of control, Lancelot can hear them bleeding out. So everything that Percival had thought of, being able to outlast his friends in their journey, not being able to seemingly die, having them all suffer from his very existence and him not being meant to have been born, Lancelot most likely heard all of that, and probably at that moment wasn't sure what to say to Percival. And thus, when Percival ended up leaving his body, essentially quote-unquote dying, this hurt Lancelot the most, because this could also mean that either Lancelot thinks that their bond wasn't strong enough for Percival, or perhaps Lancelot didn't fully make it clear that he can handle anything, that the two of them are incredibly close friends that can have each other's back through thick and thin. And perhaps he just blamed himself for not being able to keep Percival on the right track, to keep him believing in himself and others so that he wouldn't have to come to this very dark conclusion. And thus his self-loathing would end up hitting a peak after this, going back to Benwick and isolating himself from everybody to the point where he doesn't want to have to do with anything. Now, based off of the most recent chapter of Fortnite's The Apocalypse, chapter 158, it's stated by Donnie that they're going to have to hunt for Lancelot and Tristan's team, which means that there is a possibility that Lancelot may no longer be in Benwick anymore. Now, this could lead to a few different scenarios. Scenario number one would be Lancelot is taking up a similar role to what he did after he returned from that other dimension 3 years prior to the start of the Fortnite story, and him going across Britannia, doing whatever it is he was doing. We all know that, based off Grudge of Edinburgh, it had something to do with the Chaos Staffs and perhaps King Arthur himself. So for all we know, Lancelot took all that resentment, that anger, that depression, and made it to fuel him in a solo mission across Britannia to do something. Maybe to fully go off and find Dubs, to find something that could potentially slay or seal away Arthur, to stop Camelot, something like that. Maybe stop full-on sympathizers of Arthur from different kingdoms across the nation. That is a possibility, the wandering knight of war that is hunting down whoever. Now, obviously, that is maybe the least likely unless Lancelot had been able to fully keep a very, very small and covert profile over the last 2 years, hunting down Arthur's knights. But based off of context clues and how the Chaos Knights have been, I highly doubt this is the route he was going for, outside of perhaps finding Dubs. That is perhaps the most likely possibility, and perhaps he is also trying to go on this journey to maybe bring back Percival, or maybe he wants to try and go and find the Necropolis so that he can speak to Percival's spirit and maybe convince him to come back. Because we all know that Gawain has spent the last 2 years researching life spirits and enchanting spirits into bodies and inorganic objects to potentially bring Percival back. So maybe Lancelot is doing something similar over these last 2 years, and right now, he is going to have to find Percival is alive once more, and maybe they'll have a confrontation about it. Possibility number 2 is that Lancelot perhaps might have left Benwick and went on his own training arc. Maybe he went to the lands of the Druids, similar to how when the commandments were brought back, Meliodas and the gang went to the land of the Druids so that they could end up going through a training arc. Perhaps Lancelot wanted to do some training to enhance his skills, making sure that nobody else gets killed along the way, and has fully isolated himself as well in that area, and so he is completely blocked off from the rest of the world in order to focus purely on his mission to take down Arthur and the Chaos Knights. That might be a very strong possibility, as he's focused primarily right now on revenge. Mainly for Percival, but can also add in Arthur and Jericho's whole thing going on right now, so that could also be a case for Lancelot being brought into the fold and doing a training arc, perhaps fully focused on revenge, going on a revenge arc of sorts. That might be possible. And that would be very interesting if Lancelot is going through this whole revenge arc, this whole revenge training arc, and once he comes out and starts to make himself known, he sees that Percival is alive and well, and that confrontation will be interesting. I would love to see Lancelot fight Percival, and Lancelot still be stronger than Percival, but Percival just calming down Lancelot and them reconciling at the end of the day, and Lancelot just being happy that Percy is alive. I think that could be a very strong possibility of what's going on with Lancelot. Now this last possibility number 3, is definitely the least likely, at least right now, but it does have a small smidget of credibility from the story. And that is Lancelot is working for Arthur in some regard. Now, I know what everybody is thinking. Why would Lancelot want to work for the man who is, by extension, responsible for his best friend dying, for taking his mentor, older sister figure, and turning them against them and possibly brainwashing her into some weird shit? Well, perhaps he was so far gone, and perhaps he went to go face Arthur on his own once more, but fell into a trap, and Arthur, over these last 2 years, has been trying to break Lancelot. Through Lancelot's own self-loathing and guilt after what happened to Percival, and Lancelot perhaps trying to do his revenge arc, but without the training, ended up going to Camelot without anybody noticing, and perhaps Arthur captured him in secret, and has been slowly trying to bring him over to his side. Because during the start of the time skip, that very vague and ominous look into the future from Guinevere's dream of Arthur destroying Leonis and facing the sins, we see a seemingly dead Bond on the ground with a silhouette in the fog holding a bloody spear. And everybody, like myself, has speculated perhaps that is Lancelot. Perhaps Lancelot ended up betraying Bond at the end of the day for whatever reason. Now, that isn't very likely, but based off of Lancelot basically losing his cool against Mortledge and slaying him on the spot, him going through his depression arc essentially, if he went to Camelot and somehow got caught by Arthur, Arthur might have found a way to convince Lancelot to go through that whole chaos thing and make him abandon his humanity, losing his memories of the people that he cared for in a sense, and bring him over to his side as like a secret weapon for all we know. That is a big theory that people have been having on how Arthur could take Lancelot over to his side, and I think that might be a possibility. And it might have to do with Guinevere also. Perhaps Lancelot doesn't want Guinevere to be hurt, as he knows how much she cares for him, and how he doesn't want anybody else to get hurt because of him or anything else, especially with Arthur and everything that happened with Jericho and Percival. So him siding with Arthur might end up just being Arthur's manipulation and breaking him down, because if Lancelot is already in a weakened state of mind, it would not be too hard to believe for Arthur to find a way to use his chaos powers to manipulate his memories and make it so that he was part of his knights. And perhaps it took all of these years for Lancelot to fully be brought under his control, and might be revealed in a future arc, maybe at the end of the arc of that we're currently at in the manga, after we potentially get reintroduced to Tristan and have 3 of the 4 knights together, and then their fight will have to be against Lancelot and bring him back to his senses. That is a strong possibility in terms of entertainment value. I don't think it's very likely, but the possibility is still there, and I'm kind of excited if that does end up being the case, and it could also end up changing the possibility of the future vision if Percival's return manages to help bring Lancelot back before that very ominous look into the future, or perhaps that ominous look into the future was definitely a misdirect. I'll make a whole video talking about what could lead to this vision of the future and what that could potentially mean and what happened. So look forward to that somewhere down the line. But those are my thoughts and the possibilities on what's up with Lancelot post time skip, where it could be, where a story is going to lead at the moment of the apocalypse, as well as my own personal speculations on what is more likely. The last one I think would be very cool to see, but I like the revenge arc one the most. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts and opinions on these possibilities in the comment section down below, as well as what you think is up with Lancelot post time skip and what could happen in the future. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Lancelot still is my favorite character in Fortnite the Apocalypse, so I really want to see him at some point, but his reveal has to be something big, epic, and interesting. I need that to be the case. 一つに罪はない捨てたものじゃないだってそうじゃない